In the spirit of respect, authenticity, and reconciliation, the town of Slave Lake honors and acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional lands of Sawridge First Nation within Treaty 8 territory, home to Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have occupied these lands since time immemorial. Councillor Ferguson.
And to adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. So first up, we have our delegation from Northern Haven Sports Society. You guys want to come up to the mic, please? Administration, we have some individuals that would like to have seats, so we may need to figure that out. Thank you. Thanks. I'm not sure. Hi there. If you guys can state your name and address to the microphone there for me, and then we'll continue with your
street address.
The business address will be, or the Haven Support Society. Take your best guess.
Can I do PO box?
Of course you can.
Okay. My name is Shelley May Ferguson. I'm from Northern Haven Sports Society. We're at PO Box 1433, Slave Lake.
Thank you.
My name is Bernadette Baldwin, and I'm also from Northern Haven Support Society. PO Box 1433.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here today. I wanted to come and just do an overview of services that Northern Haven provides in Slave Lake for the council, because it might help answer some questions that maybe people might bring to you. So we'll try to be quick because normally this takes 15 minutes. I think we have 10. So this is Bernadette. She is our programs manager, and she's been with Northern Haven since 2010. And I'm Shelley May Ferguson. I've been with Northern Haven since 2011 and the executive director since 2012. So we've been doing this work in this community for a while now. I'm going to do some really quick background so we can get on to what we're actually doing now. So Northern Haven Sports Society was incorporated in 1996. So we've been in the community for almost 30 years now. Started with a grant for an outreach worker, which most shelters do, just to raise awareness in communities about the need for a shelter. Many people who are longtime Slave Lake residents might remember the petition that was brought out in like 2008, 2009, to petition the government to help us build a shelter in Slave Lake. So the board was able to secure funding, and in 2008, they set up a location. And in 2009, they moved to their permanent location. We've been there for 15 years now. Following in 2013, I signed Northern Haven into contract funding with the government. So we've been in contract funding for over 10 years now. So that gives us that stability that the shelter will remain open in Slave Lake. So every year we have a renewal of that contract. And in 2015, the government announced an increase of funding to all of the emergency shelters. So in April of 2016, we expanded our programming to include community services. So now we could serve people who weren't staying at the shelter, but were also fleeing abuse or were in abusive situations. So we're one of a network of shelters in Alberta. With those other shelters, we make up the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters. Our executive director at the ACWS is Jan Reimer. She's long been involved in provincial politics, and she really helps us use our collective voice with the GOA. And we're also a member of our national professional body, Women's Shelters Canada. So we really benefit from the resources and research that those two professional bodies afford us. Okay, so now let's talk about what we do. So it's been a long time. We've been evolving this program over, the last 12 years. We offer programs specific to intimate partner violence, so domestic violence, safety planning and danger assessment. Bernadette is one of only a handful of domestic violence professionals in Alberta who is certified to train shelter staff in administering the danger assessment, which is a tool that's used to measure a woman's risk of being murdered by her partner. The stats are the same as they've been in Canada for a long time. Occasionally they'll increase, but the stat is still that once every 6 days in Canada, a woman's murdered by her partner or ex-partner. So Bernadette actually just recently finished training the staff at Atikamek's Healing Center for Women and Children. They are set to open their doors of a new 24-bed facility, and it's beautiful, at the end of May. And that's really good news for the women in our community. We also talk about tech safety, skill building for women that are coming into the shelter, which usually is around meal planning, cooking, budgeting, accessing agencies and services in the community relevant to their service plan. So income support, housing, health services. We offer parenting support and resources, financial education, including financial literacy and budgeting, and creating a support network. Financial education is really a big one because it's the most common form of abuse that we see. It's really used to control somebody in an intimate partner violence situation. So who do we serve? So we have 3 different types of services we provide in the community. We have the emergency women's shelter, we have community services, and our outreach programming, which was our original funding. We still run off a separate grant for that program. So the shelter has a specific mandate related to intimate partner violence. We're funded and trained to assist women who are fleeing intimate partner violence. This service is vital because, as I mentioned, the stats are such that women are still being murdered once a week in Canada on average. Okay, so our mandate is really really clear. Women with or without children who are fleeing all types of abuse, women who are at risk and are in crisis, and women who are at risk and need temporary accommodation. And then anybody seeking admission into the shelter needs to call us herself. So sometimes we'll receive calls from different agencies, but we need to speak to her herself so she can make an informed choice about whether or not she wants to come into the shelter. We don't want people feeling like they have to or being told they have to. Okay, and so that shelter is made up of a crisis line that's monitored 24/7 by trained crisis intervention workers. And we provide a safe shelter to women and children fleeing all types of abuse, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, sexual, and trafficking. So we provide the things you would think we're providing: food, shelter, clothing. But we also help with the skill building. We help them set up a bank account, make sure that they're being safe with online activities, setting up a CRA account if they need. And then we assist them to develop a service plan that's client-led and trauma-informed. And it includes everything from court support and transportation to medical appointments and getting in touch with legal advice. And we also have trained parenting services team lead and childcare workers to help women who are parents deal with parenting while addressing domestic violence. And we're a small shelter. We're just a house. We have 4 rooms, 10 beds, and we cover like a really big area. So the next closest provincially funded shelter is in Peace River, and then the other way it's Morinville. So we get calls from Athabasca and clients from Athabasca. We get calls and clients from Sucker Creek, and all those communities from High Prairie on, Smith, et cetera, et cetera. So our focus really is on women who are immediate danger in that area. So if we get calls from Calgary, unless she really has a connection to Slave Lake or she's fleeing trafficking, so she's coming here because she doesn't know anybody, then really we're trying to keep these beds open for people who are in this community. And even though it says that we're a shelter in our name, you know, we're Women's Emergency Shelter, we're actually a safe house. So we're helping people who are in immediate danger of being, you know, killed or severely injured by their partner. And that's what our role is in the community. The good news is our community services program can offer a much wider range of support. So people who can't or don't want to come into the shelter, or maybe they're dealing with severe addiction or mental health issues, which makes it unsafe for them to come into the shelter, then we can still help them if they're in the community. So Bernadette's going to speak more on community services and other services.
Okay, so community services. Our clients are women and in some cases men. We can serve men as well who are vulnerable to domestic violence or have experienced family violence or trafficking. So these are people that may have left the shelter, or women that might have left the shelter and still need supports, or maybe they don't want to go into the shelter, or maybe they still live with an abuser. So we'll do some safety planning and things like that with her. They must be currently residing in Slave Lake or able to get here to do some work with us, whether it's housing or income support or meeting us for different reasons. They can be referred by shelter staff, community agencies around town, or by themselves. They can receive the same service as clients in emergency shelter, but may not want or be able to go into the shelter, as I mentioned. So we have services such as the danger assessment, securing housing, whether that's low income or regular housing, court preparation. We have a court support worker for court prep and support, replacing ID, securing employment, safety planning, tech safety, stalking information, and securing emergency protection orders, etc. So in community services, we also have our parenting support services. We have a parenting support team lead. She works across all 3 programs with the shelter, community services, and outreach. The focus is on building a client's capacity to parent, utilizing community resources, and address ongoing trauma experienced by children who have been exposed by family violence. She facilitates the Parenting After Violence 12-week certificate course and delivers the Violence is Preventable to program to grades K to 12 at the local schools. So our community outreach program also runs out of community services. So her mandate is to provide public awareness and education to community members in Slave Lake and surrounding areas. So she visits Canuso, Drift Pile, Smith, Fost, Widewater, Canyon Creek. You'll usually see her with an info booth at, say, school events, trade shows, craft fairs. You'll see her at the block party.
She's all purple.
She will be all purple. She organizes NHS events such as the Prevention of Family Violence Month. So the Purple Ribbon campaign that you might see the ribbons around town. She facilitates ladies skill building and learning circle programs. I'll talk a little bit about her programs really quick, but a couple skill building examples is she went to a what are we talking about? The car.
Oh, yes,
the auto place.
Auto body place?
Right.
Avalon
Body, yeah. So the clients were able to bring their cars and they taught them how to do oil changes, change tires, things like that. We run a cooking club that we have once a month.
And they did budgeting today.
Yeah, and budgeting. So she distributes NHSS promotional materials to businesses and agencies in Slave Lake and the surrounding communities to ensure everyone has access to our services.
Yeah. So if anybody needs any of our information for their business or agency, feel free to get in touch. So I'm just going to end with a few things that you might not know about Northern Haven. We will admit pets to a shelter. Most shelters will now because they understand the connection between domestic violence and abusive pets. Every year we end up admitting more children than we do women. We have a lot of families that come in and we provide all those kids with a backpack, a lunch kit, and all the school supplies they need. And we have it sort of divided between Living Waters and High Prairie School Division, which for some reason they have 2 different lists of school supplies. So we make sure they have whatever the list is. And then staff members from other agencies can come into the shelter and visit. Public health has come in to do vaccinations for moms who have fallen behind because they've been dealing with crises. And, the Children Family Services will come in and meet with a client in the shelter. They're welcome to do so. We also do have about twice a year, a senior that will come in. So our mandate is intimate partner violence, but it doesn't apply in the case of an elder who's experiencing abuse from their family. It could be their partner, but it's usually their family. There are 2 shelters in Alberta that are dedicated solely to seniors. There's Sage in Edmonton and there's Kirby Place in Calgary. So they will specifically help they specifically shelter elderly people. So we can help people get in touch with them. We do help men through community services. And we have about 20 staff members, including our support workers, our childcare workers, and our court support worker. So that is what we want to let you know about Northern Haven. If anybody has questions, feel free to get in touch. And we left some information over there, brochures, posters, if anybody wants to take them. Thank you.
Any
I hope we didn't
questions?
go too far over.
No, you're fantastic. Is there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, just a general comment from me. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your presentation. I think you guys offer amazing services and programs clearly to the members of our community. And I think you guys have a great reputation and recognition throughout the community as well. So just thank you for the hard work. It's much
Thank you.
appreciated.
Thank you for letting us come tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, ladies. Okay. Moving forward, we have our dialogue partner presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to do one more check to make sure that you can hear my voice.
Yes, we can hear you, Kim. Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come and spend a little bit of time with all of you this evening. My name is Kim Hishka, everyone, and I lead an organization called Dialogue Partners. And we have been working with the town here over the last number of months to have a very important conversation. As everyone, as I imagine many of you in the room know, that we've been having a conversation about where would be the best place to have a permanent location for a shelter for people who are experiencing homelessness. And I did want to begin our presentation tonight by expressing a huge amount of gratitude and a huge amount of appreciation for all of the people that contributed to this conversation along the way. We know that people took their time, they took energy, they took care in thinking about what mattered to them, what were their hopes and their fears, their concerns, their worries, the opportunities. We heard it all, certainly over the last number of months, and I believe the conversation will continue. And so just wanted to begin by saying a big thank you to everybody everyone that participated. So over this presentation, we'd like to walk you through the highlights of what can be found in the What We Heard report. So we've prepared a summary document that is intended to highlight the themes, where we saw commonalities in what people shared with us, where were some of the tensions, because as we can imagine on a topic such as this, there is no one perspective or one opinion. And so this report and the summary that we are going to share today is intended to capture all of those different voices and as much as possible give you a sense of what it was that we heard from the many different participants. So I did want to take one step back here for a moment and just speak a little bit to purpose and what the engagement was focused on. Rowan, if you could jump one slide forward for me here. Just a reminder that the intention of this, as I mentioned, looking to find a permanent location for our homeless shelter. This is certainly a decision and a choice that would impact many people in the community, some people more impacted, to some people less impacted, but something that matters to almost everyone that we spoke with. This will certainly allow for people who are experiencing homelessness an opportunity to find and locate shelter when needed. So let me tell you just a little bit about the approach and what we are thinking about when we go to design and invite people into processes. Rowan, if you could bump a slide forward for me. We align with our professional association known as IAP2. That's a long acronym for the International Association of Public Participation. They provide standards, guidelines, best practices for what makes for a meaningful public conversation like this one. And these were things that we considered and worked with the town on when we were designing how we were going to be bringing people together. We spent a lot of time thinking about taking an equity-centered approach, appreciating that some people have lots of capacity and agency and avenues to express their opinions and their perspectives on this topic. And we know that other people have less capacity and less agency. And that doesn't mean that their perspectives, their opinions, their voices are any less important. And so we aimed to provide a variety of opportunities and a variety of ways for people to participate. So on the next slide, I'll tell you just a little bit about who we engaged and who we heard from over the course of this conversation. We heard from many different people. So obviously many people participating who are residents of Slave Lake, people from surrounding communities. And so while they maybe don't live in Slave Lake, it's still a topic and an issue that they care about. Business owners, service providers. We did have quite a detailed conversation with current shelter staff and some of their management and leadership, their leadership team. We also had an opportunity to speak with shelter clients as well. And so our goal again was to hear from a variety of perspectives, a variety of values and opinions on the topic. So on the next slide, I will tell you just a little bit about who participated and who responded to some of the different engagement opportunities. So we hosted a number, as I mentioned, a number of different ways. We had an online survey that we had significant uptake from people who responded to that online survey. More than 800 people took the opportunity to respond and give their thoughts and perspectives. We also hosted a number of in-person community conversations. We knew that some people find value in coming and having that in-person conversation. And so our team, town staff, as well as many of our members of council were there to speak and listen to many of the community members that came out. As I referenced earlier, we had a chance to speak with shelter staff as well as shelter clients. We did have an online presence where people had an opportunity to go and gather information and participate in the various opportunities. So I'll tell you just a little bit more on the next slide about specifically who responded to our engagement. So you'll notice that we asked the question, how were people connected to this conversation? People had the opportunity to respond to all or to as many of these connections as possible. So we didn't ask for only one connection. So you can see that again, many people were connected, either that they worked at a shelter, maybe they had experience with other shelters. Sometimes they were interested community members. Some of them had businesses or homes or residents near the current shelter location. So again, quite a wide variety of people that responded to this engagement. On the next slide, we also asked people a little bit about where do they live, where do they work? Again, just trying to understand who's participating. And we use this information throughout the engagement to take a look at who are we hearing from and potentially who didn't we hear from as a result. And then finally, on the next slide, we also heard a little bit from, again, where people within the town of Slave Lake, the different areas of town and where people were participating from. So that hopefully should give you just a bit of an overview as to who we heard from and some of the different ways that we were gathering that input. Now I'm going to move us into the heart of the content here, is that to tell you a bit about what were the things that we heard. So as a reminder on the next slide, we had presented community members and participants with 5 different possible locations of where the permanent location would be established. And the intention was to ask community members to take a look at these different locations to indicate levels of comfort around the different locations, and most importantly, to identify what did people see as the pros or the benefits of locating a shelter in this location? What were the cons or the drawbacks? And then also to think about what are some of the trade-offs related to each one of these sites. So again, on the next slide, as I had just suggested, so we had asked people related to each of these level of comfort, those pros and those cons and those trade-offs. So I did want to take an overarching look and tell you just a little bit about, it was as we looked at the data and we combed through thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of really thoughtful feedback that people provided, was that there were some themes to what people shared that were consistent regardless of the location that people indicated that they were comfortable with. And so these couple of bullet points I wanted to highlight first because, again, they were consistent regardless of the location that people indicated a preference for. So one thing that really stood out for us in the data and the feedback that was received is that there is a deep care for the community by the community. And so people shared sentiments of, this is our community, we want it to be the best place possible, and we choose to live here intentionally. We could go other places, but we want to live here, and therefore we want to make the very best of it. And so we certainly heard people talking about or grappling with the struggle of how do we ensure that neighbors, families, businesses are kept safe and thriving, and also looking after people in our community who don't have as many resources or who maybe are struggling. And so there was a deep care that resonated throughout all of the locations. Not surprisingly, again, a common thread across all the locations, safety was at the core of every conversation, or not every, I shouldn't say every conversation, of many of the conversations. But how safety looked and how people described what is safe differed. And so some people talked to us about safety related to worry and concern over increasing crime and what kinds of impacts that could have and potential correlations to location of the homeless shelter. There were also people who talked about safety related to the safety and well-being of shelter clients. So again, still talking about safety, but talking about it from a very different perspective and coming at it from a different understanding. And so again, safety was a key component and something that community members and participants wanted this council to consider very deeply when they moved forward. We heard from people across the board that whatever approach is taken, establishing a location is one thing, but then also that it requires a much more holistic approach. So a location can provide some opportunities and some relief, but that is certainly not the only things that are needed. And so treatment and support for mental health services is certainly something that was raised regardless of the location. I think it's also important for me to share here. It's not a specific bullet point on the screen here right now, but you'll see it throughout the summary report. We certainly heard people say they don't see a need for a shelter in the community, or don't believe that having a shelter is the appropriate way to address some of the issues that we're seeing. And so I think that's also important to consider. While the engagement was focused on the different options, there were community members and participants that indicated that this was not an appropriate approach and something that they didn't want to see in their community. And again, we heard that in a variety of different ways. There was concerns and questions raised about potential impact on town resources if there was to be an identified permanent location. And so those considerations needed to be made. And then last but not least, overarchingly, there certainly was a sense of if something was too close here, then there was a drawback of that being too far away. Or if something was too far away, then potentially it was too close on this side. And so we heard from people that there is no one perfect solution that will appease all of the needs and all of the perspectives. And so there will be people that always feel that it's too close in one area and it's too far. It's too far in others. So I'm conscious of my time that I have here, so I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep moving forward. I do want to take just a couple of minutes here to tell you about what we heard from shelter staff and shelter clients. I think it's important to highlight here that when you look at the numbers of participants, we certainly had significantly larger numbers of participants from community members compared to the numbers of participants of shelter clients and shelter staff. When we're undertaking our public engagement, this wasn't intended to be a statistically valid or a representative sample. This engagement was intended to understand all of the differing perspectives, needs, and values that were out there. And so we felt that it was also important and abiding by those best practices that we shared with you what was on the hearts and minds of shelter staff. I'm not going to read out every one of the details that are in here, but certainly shelter staff gave us lots of suggestions on where to locate and where not to locate. So considerations around casinos or schools. The value of proximity to the Friendship Center. Thinking about mobility, not everyone has the same, or all shelter clients have the same level of mobility. And so that's something that would needed to be considered. The shelter staff certainly acknowledged that there is no ideal location, but there are other places, other cities and towns who have located shelters in residential areas. And so there's an opportunity to look and see what can be learned from those experiences. We also heard from our shelter clients. And so we had the opportunity a number of shelter clients came to the town building. We had a chance to sit and talk with a number of them. Our team also had the opportunity to go to the shelter as well and to speak to a number of the shelter clients one-on-one. And so they, again, gave a unique perspective to what needs to be considered for an ideal location. So they talked about access to different services and resources. The opportunities to have more than just a place to sleep, so that if there was opportunity for programming or services, that there was a space and a place to do those things. And so again, you will see the information in the report from shelter clients threaded through the summary report. All right, so let's move to each of the locations. So you'll notice, everyone, I'm going to work through I'll highlight each of the locations. I'm presenting it to you in the order of the locations where people were the most comfortable to the least comfortable. So that's the order in which I'm sharing this information with you. Again, the request to community members and respondents to this was indicating levels of comfort with specific locations, and then understanding what are the benefits, drawbacks, and trade-offs to the various locations. So location D, near the fire hall or the current site, from people who responded to this question, people indicated the highest level of comfort. So you can see the percentages of people who indicated they were either very comfortable or comfortable with this location. And when people talked about what did they see as the benefits and the drawbacks, which are on the next slide, people talked about things about having past experience. The shelter's there right now. We know what we're working with and what might be some of the things that need to get sorted out. Proximity to police, RCMP, and that there is some existing infrastructure. Other people indicated drawbacks, though, that it's potentially not as accessible as some of the other sites and potentially farther away from resources such as the Friendship Center. So moving to the next location, the second one that people indicated they had a level or a very comfortable or comfortable level was known as location A, or near the recycle depot. And so again, here people gave us feedback on what was working and what wasn't working. I'll move to that next slide, please. So definitely overwhelmingly heard people talk about location A was close to the Friendship Center, and this would be a real benefit. We heard people, though, talk about worries around traffic safety. Would there be implications related to airport expansion, and then the potential for crime or theft to increase in that area, and they saw potentially as drawbacks. Moving on to the next location. So this one was known as the Phoenix site. This one was sort of the farthest away. You can see as we move forward through these sites, there is less level of comfort and a much higher level of uncomfortable, or pardon me, very uncomfortable or uncomfortable here with this location. And on the next slide, people talked about certainly the benefits to this location. Lots of opportunity for expansion, lots of green space in this area, reasonably close to resources, but many people raising concerns about, because there would be a highway that would need to be crossed in order to access it, concerns both for people that are crossing the highway as well as the traffic that's traveling, and that maybe the location is just too isolated and people couldn't access the resources, or clients couldn't access the resources that they needed. And finally, our location number C, which was the old medical clinic, you again can see large amounts of people indicating they would be very uncomfortable with this location, and a number of people also indicating they would be very uncomfortable and uncomfortable. And so some of the reasons that we heard behind that on the next slide, people indicated a worry about being sort of right in the midst of a residential area and businesses that are close by. We heard lots of people talk about potential impacts on property values due to the proximity of being in the same place. Certainly, though, on the benefits, we heard from certainly shelter staff talk about that an existing building was there and could potentially be modified or adapted to provide a variety or to increase the services or facilities that the shelter is currently offering, and provides a very central location that is walkable or accessible to many other resources. So moving a slide forward, this was our final location, known as the old daycare site. We heard overwhelmingly, again, from respondents, that this was not a desirable or not a comfortable location. So you can again see, of the people that responded, very high levels of uncomfortable or very uncomfortable. At this location, some of the reasons and some of the drawbacks and rationale, we'll just move to that slide. just moving one slide forward for me, was again, there was lots of fear and worry about the location, or sorry, the closeness to a school, impacts on potentially residents or businesses in that area. Although a few people did indicate, again, a very central location, and that in that area there was some existing infrastructure. So as I come to the end of the things that I wanted to share with you here, there also was, as we heard from people, there were questions or additional considerations that were raised. So certainly people wanted council to consider the cost implications. We know that resources are finite and there are many needs in the town of Slave Lake, and wanted to ensure that whatever we started, that there was ongoing funding that would be able to support it. Additional supports might be required beyond the shelter. And then certainly we heard people say that while it's very difficult to determine the location that has the least number of impacts, we heard many people say that this is a needed service and that this is a needed resource in the community. So with that, I will close out. Again, just to reiterate the message that I shared when I started, just a sincere appreciation and thank you to all of the people that participated in this conversation and have continued to have this conversation. I know that council has no easy choices going forward, and that was reflected and acknowledged by many who participated. So again, with that, I will close, say thank you very much, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Kim. We are likely going to have some questions for council from that, so we'll try and facilitate that through the video conferencing. So I'll open up the floor to council for your questions. Councillor Choba.
Thank you. I've got a quick question. You said there were 839 responses. Were these unique responses or repeated responses?
So using the information that we have, they were unique responses. The online platform that we use has some built-in, I'll call it infrastructure in the background to identify those unique responses. Additionally, our team did, as we looked through those survey responses, did look for occurrences of, where was there somebody going online that was just answering the same question over and over and over and over again. And so we looked and watched for those kinds of things. It's also why I would suggest to council as you're considering this, the quantitative data, those pie charts that we provided, give you one data point. It gives you a sentiment, an understanding of where people were at. And it is also important to look at those benefits and drawbacks because they tell a broader story and offer more considerations. Councillor Choba, I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Kim? Okay, thank you, Kim. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Need a motion to accept this information. Councillor Choba.
I'll make a motion to accept as information.
Thank you. The delegation's presented. Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Okay, so we will continue with our business arising from delegations. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. So the purpose of this report is for the Town of Slave Lake Council to choose a permanent homeless shelter location for the Town of Slave Lake. In the fall of 2023, the Town of Slave Lake was approved for funding by the province of Alberta to operate a 24/7 emergency homeless shelter. 5 areas of land were identified as possible locations that align within current zoning regulations. Location A being 7th Street Northeast between the Animal Shelter and Outdoor Recycling Depot. Location B, 305 6th Avenue Southwest, which is the old daycare site. Location C, 213 Third Avenue Northeast, which is the old medical care clinic. Location D, 901 Caribou Trail, which is the current temporary shelter site. And location E, Highway 88 and 6th Avenue Southeast, which is sometimes referred to as the Phoenix site. To determine the best location for a long-term homeless shelter, the Town of Slave Lake Council has worked with a third-party consultant, Dialogue Partners, to conduct public consultations. During the months of February to March 2024, the Town of Slave Lake invited community members to provide feedback on each location by conducting an online survey and attending one of 2 open houses hosted at the Legacy Center. Upon review of the final report from Dialogue Partners, along with the other forms of formal and informal feedback received from a variety of different stakeholders, council is required to proceed with a decision on a permanent location for the emergency homeless shelter. The options before council are as follows: to proceed with location A, 7th Street Northeast, in between the animal shelter and outdoor recycling depot, or proceed with location B, 305 6th Avenue Southwest, the old daycare site, or proceed with location C, 213 3rd Avenue Northeast, the old medical care clinic, or location D, 901 Caribou Trail, which is the current temporary shelter site, or location E, Highway 88 and 6th Avenue Southeast, Phoenix. There are 5 potential motions associated to those locations for your consideration, where applicable.
Okay, that I'll open up the floor to discussion.
Well,
Counselor
since nobody wants to
Ferguson,
go first,
usually
I'll be the
you're
first one here.
I was waiting.
So, given the sensitive nature of the topic we are discussing, I did prepare some notes, so please bear with me. I understand there are strong opinions on this topic, and at the end of the day, it will be impossible to make everyone happy. Sometimes a win in politics is where neither side is happy per se, but where the majority of people can live with it. To me, I will say that I do believe perhaps we could have done a better job about communicating what this is and what it is not. There was a lot of miscommunication floating around the community, that we were building a massive complex, that this is the first time we've had a shelter, that the taxpayers are footing the bill, et cetera, et cetera. We've had a shelter of sorts for the last 10 to 15 years. At what point do we start to call that permanent? The only thing that hasn't been permanent in those years is the location. I've heard comments that because of the shelter this year, that there's an increase in crime. I would respectfully disagree with that. 2 years ago, the shelter.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen of the gallery, this is not a public hearing. It is a public meeting, but it is not a public hearing. What that means is that commentary from the gallery and questions are not permitted. If you choose to speak out of turn again, I will have you removed from the meeting. These are the rules of every council meeting. Please respect those rules. And if you are unable to do so, the door is there. Councilor Ferguson, please continue.
So as I was saying, I've heard comments that because of the shelter this year, that there's an increase in crime. I would respectfully disagree with that, and I would like to explain why. 2 years ago, the shelter operated 24/7. Last year, the shelter operated 24/7 for large portions of the season. For the most part, the biggest difference this year compared to the last 2 seasons is that we have operated for approximately two to 3 weeks longer into the spring. I have a hard time believing that those additional weeks has materially changed things from years prior. Additionally, I would say that our community is not unique. Pretty much every community is dealing with homelessness. This isn't a Slave Lake issue, but pretty much a Canada-wide issue. Check out the Facebook discussion boards of other communities and you'll see that I'm telling the truth. Communities that have shelters and do not have shelters are all dealing with the same thing. The vast majority of people that I've spoken to agree that there should be some form of a shelter. There may be some opinions about the scope and the scale of it, but most people I've spoken to do agree that at bare minimum, we should have something for the winter months. To me, though, this decision isn't about shelter operations. This isn't about whether we operate in the summer months or just the winter months, whether meals are provided or whether we operate during the daytime and so on. The decision today is about having this stability of a location. Every single year that I've been on council, there has been angst about the location and continual uncertainty surrounding that. That was an obstacle when the Fretcham Center ran the program, the Homeless Coalition ran the program, and now that the town is facilitating the program. Whether it be the town that operates the shelter or some other third party, a location is needed regardless. Now that that's out of the way, I'd like to move on to what the discussion tonight is about, location. When I first went into this, I honestly thought that location A beside the recycling center was going to be largely preferred by the community. While it was a location that residents were the second most comfortable with, it was clear that residents were concerned about potential costs to the taxpayers in getting this site ready. There were also concerns about walking along truck routes. Additionally, the airport is currently in the process of undergoing a master plan. So as part of this master plan, we had an aeronautical assessment completed in regards to Site A. While I won't delve too much into the details of the 6-page report, the overview is that Site A is situated in the second highest noise exposure forecast rating, that residential uses are not recommended, that speech interference and annoyance caused by aircraft noise may be very significant, and that complaints may be vigorous. Locations B, C, and E largely aligned with the comfort level of the community that I thought they would align with. So this brings me to location D, the fire hall site. 76.3% of residents were either comfortable or neutral to the location, which honestly came as somewhat as a surprise to me. Residents indicated that this location was favorable due to not being next to schools, not in the middle of a residential area, on the edge of the community, and that is located next to the future police site. So to me, this does show the importance of community engagement. The community engagement that was conducted showed me that residents were most comfortable with location D, the fire hall site, rather than the site I thought the community would be most comfortable with, which initially was the recycling center. While no location is going to be a perfect location, given the options we have, I believe that the fire hall location is the best option available to us. And as such, I support that site as the location going forward.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Adams.
I'll be honest with this setup. I wasn't too sure how we were going to be moving forward in this. If we should be doing prepared statements, if we should be doing an overall discussion on a site by site. I was thinking more in line with discussions, pros and cons, so we have an opportunity to evaluate each location. I understand we've read this document thoroughly for quite some time here, and it has brought forward a lot of questions. A lot of what Councillor Ferguson has said, honestly, it did kind of surprise me in the direction of overall, but between what is being said in the community, to me personally, as far as budgetary constraints and concerns, as well, not, and when I say that, I'm not referring necessarily to the funding of the program, which is provincially funded, but more as to concerns over additional infrastructure that town may have to incur for some of the sites that are out there. That's right. That weighing in, my decision kind of shifted as well. And I am in line with Councillor Ferguson on location D over at 901 Caribou Trail. If we want to have more of an in-depth discussion on each location, I'm fine with that too. I'm not too sure what you guys want to do, but that's where I'm so far leaning towards.
Yeah, I think it would be good for each counselor to weigh in on as Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Adams have as to where they are currently at, and then we can provide commentary, or you can provide questions to each counselor after they provide their information. It looks like Councillor Wallam's ready to go.
Yeah. Firstly, I know that this has been a really difficult decision for me. I think growing up in Slave Lake, tourism was always talked about. Although going back and thinking about it, I think the one who had the biggest vision for tourism was Billy Lucan, who put the point out on the that big restaurant that everyone remembers and has fond memories of. And now we've got a new group that's spearheading tourism as well. So it makes it a really tough decision. Looking through all the research that we had a chance to look through. I want to start by saying there isn't a perfect location for a homeless shelter in our community, and that this is a very difficult decision to make. I looked at the results from the various engagements and surveys, and there was two different ways for me to decipher the information. Looking through the online surveys, you could rank the 5 different destinations by highest level of comfort and also by the lowest level of discomfort. If you combine the very comfortable and comfortable percentages and rank them, you would get location D at the top with the fire hall at 62.5% comfortable. The second location is the recycle center at 50.5%. Location E, Highway 88 at 30.4. Location C, the old clinic at 20.6, and the old daycare at 9.5. Now, if you combine the very uncomfortable and uncomfortable and looked at it the other way, percentages, and ranked them, you would get the exact same order, but exactly reversed. So the location B was the daycare at 83.4%, very uncomfortable. Location C, the clinic at 65.7% uncomfortable. Location E, Highway 88 at 53.3% uncomfortable. Location A, the recycle center at 34.2% uncomfortable. And the one that had the least amount of uncomfortable discomfort was the fire hall at 23.7%. So another way to examine this is through safety. Although there is no real data in the report to tell us which location is the most safe, we can go through each one and think about lighting, continual presence, proximity to schools, businesses, residences, and also safety of the staff and safety of the residents when you think of crossing highways to get to services. When you compare what the majority of the data presents, as well as information I've received in discussions, option D makes the most sense. It's where the majority of people are most comfortable having it, and there is the no problem. Can I continue?
Yes.
Yep. And that there's the least amount of discomfort in that space. It is on shared land with the Lesser Slave Lake Fire Department. This will allow for continuous access to that area by a recognized person in uniform. The vision when the town of Slave Lake purchased the property was for it to be a dedicated space for emergency services. This site could be a future home for the local law enforcement as well, since we have currently outgrown our current facility. The new home for the ambulance will be down the road in the old fire hall building. It's also well connected with sidewalks to the downtown, the hospital, Friendship Center, and other services, and it's spaced out of most businesses and residential communities. Cost-wise, it also makes sense since utilities are already tied in, and all of the costs that have been provided by the province already in that location at no cost to the taxpayer. I would have trouble thinking of a secondary space. The recycle center is too close to a preschool, an elementary school, and a daycare. In my opinion, it would be Highway 88, but I would not want it next to any highway for the concern of the residents, and the expense associated with acquiring the space would be the most out of the 5 choices. So I support in its existing location, site D at the fire hall.
I think that's a good point that you made regarding the location with regards to the emergency services complex. That any future site selection for our CMP detachment would be located within there, as our fire services are already located in with there, and we already have that land. So that is also a good point that didn't come up often, I would say, in the shelter survey results that were presented there. Councillor Choba.
Thank you. Similar to Councillor Ferguson, I did prepare a document that I'm going to read from, and I ask that you bear with me. Today, I speak to you not just as your town councillor, but as a fellow community member who's deeply committed to the well-being of our town and every person within it. We stand at a crucial juncture, tasked with making a decision that will shape the future of our community and provide for our most vulnerable, the unhoused. The issue of homelessness, as you're well aware, is not just a local phenomenon, but also a nationwide challenge, similar to what Councillor Ferguson shared. It begs us to answer a fundamental question. How do we, as a society, respond to the need of those who have the least amongst us? Here in Slave Lake, we pride ourselves on being a close-knit community, a place where neighbors look out for each other, and where every individual is valued. The town has shown immense heart. We've come together in times of needs, in times of crisis, and today we are called upon again to show the same spirit of unity and care. The discussion about a permanent location is about more than just selecting the location. It's about affirming our community to be in a community that does not look away when we see anyone suffering. Every person deserves a place to sleep, access to supports when they are in need, and the dignity of being seen and heard. This shelter is not just a building, it's a beacon of hope, a place of refuge, a step towards healing for many. It represents our collective commitment to ensure no one is left out in the cold or left behind. I know there are concerns, and rightfully so. Questions about safety, resources, and about the future of our town are important. We have heard from many of you through surveys, community conversations, and personal stories. Your input is invaluable, and your concerns are taken with the utmost seriousness. We must also recognize the complex nature of homelessness. It is not just about providing a roof over heads. It's about addressing the underlying issues, mental health, addictions, economic disparity, that leads individuals to such dire situations. Our approach must be holistic and compassionate. We must ensure that the location chosen not only serves the logistic needs of the shelter, but also integrates it into our community in a way that is respectful and thoughtful. We are tasked with making a decision that balances the needs of all community members, those who need the shelter and those who live and work around it. Let us move forward with empathy and understanding. Let us show that Slave Lake is a place where everyone, regardless of their circumstances, can find compassion and a helping hand. This shelter is a reflection of our values, a testament to our beliefs in second chances and our commitment to lifting each other up. My preferred location is 901 Caribou Trail, location D, where our current temporary shelter operates. This also has emerged as a site familiar and accessible to those who need it the most. This location has been the cradle of care for our homeless population. It is a place that already feels like a refuge to those who have so little. Some of you again have voiced your concerns about this location, worried about the potential for increased crime or the impact on nearby businesses and homes. Let me assure you, the safety of every resident in Slave Lake remains a paramount concern for this council. Enhancing policing, community outreach programs, and other dialogue between shelter administration and community will be integral parts of this initiative going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Okay, I have prepared a bit of a statement as well. It touches on a few things that Councillor Ferguson already mentioned, but I will read it anyways. So ever since I began my term on council, there has been an ongoing issue every year with securing a location for the temporary MAP program. While we have had a seasonal MAP program here since 2014 and has been at various locations since then, and location has continually been an issue every fall, the opening date has often been delayed well into the colder months as well due to appeals on MPC decisions. While the not in my backyard response is certainly understandable from all residents, there is no perfect place, and council has also heard loud and clear from many that we need to do better to assist in this where we can. While the term permanent throughout this engagement process has been somewhat regrettable, what it really means is that we do not want to continue to fight appeals year over year and move to various locations. And what we seek to understand from the public of Slave Lake is where they feel the most suitable location for the shelter is, so that we can maintain consistency for its users and the operation in general. In no way does the use of the word permanent imply that there will be a structure built or that this will be the same way forever, as this will continue to be contingent on funding from the province. After reviewing the report, I was torn between location D and location A, having kept safety in mind being the #1 priority as heard from the survey. I have weighed the pros and cons of both of those locations. In light of the report from the Airport Commission and the fact that we would face service costs at location A, I do also agree with the majority of my colleagues and feel that location D does make the most sense at this time. It does have the most support from the community in general, and with the potential of the future RCMP station and other services at this location, it makes sense.
Thank you. I guess that makes this my turn. So first of all, I would like to thank the public for your attendance here tonight. We don't get a ton of people out to council meetings regularly, so it's nice to see that although this is contentious, it has brought our community together in a sense. I would also like to thank several members of our Shelter Advisory Committee, Mr. Vanderwell, Ms. Ferguson, and Ms. Coutre for their participation here this evening, and it is nice to see you in attendance. I will give a brief update with regards to a few things, particularly with regards to crime in our community. And this is just developed as I watched question period this afternoon. So a big thanks goes to our provincial government and to MLA Sinclair for responding to our repeated calls for action. So for the last 6 weeks or so, probably 8 weeks more like it, we've been in contact with our local RCMP detachment, Eastern District, as well as the province regarding a plan for some of the encampments that are not located on private property or not located on town property, as there's no jurisdiction for us to effectively go in and remove those. As we have done that, it was announced during question period this afternoon that Minister Nixon has committed to making Slave Lake the pilot project for their mobile navigation center to help with homelessness and encampments in our community. What that means regarding a mobile navigation center, this is what they have done in Edmonton so far and are moving the model to Calgary. So in Edmonton, they actually have a permanent location, and in Calgary, they will as well, and they're going to stay open for some time. They're creating a mobile version for communities such as ourselves. So this will tour around from community to community. So what this does is this connects clients and encampments with housing and financial services, healthcare, including addictions and mental health services, receiving an identification card, as well as Indigenous cultural supports and related liaisons. So effectively what it does is connect individuals that are experiencing homelessness in encampments to supports, as well as provide transportation. So that was the commitment that Slave Lake will be the first community to receive the supports of the rural mobile navigation center is what has been identified from the province as the plan for any encampments that are available at that time. So that was just announced in question period this afternoon. So those are the details I have at this moment. So I just wanted to identify that to everyone here. From there, so at the beginning of this process, so back to the decision at hand, speaking for myself alone, I had a different location in mind. And that would have been the location that was close to the airport. I've lived in the Northeast for my entire time in Slave Lake, and I've had a shelter mat program location beside me at the Friendship Center, and I've lived in a neighborhood that has had a winter emergent shelter. So I'm very familiar with that and the operations that have occurred there. I liked the connection that was with the proximity to the other available areas that our homeless clients are welcome, such as the Friendship Center. Our homeless clients are welcome there, and the proximity to that. This location did provide some challenges because it would require some type of crossing across Caribou Trail. As well, it would require a sidewalk of some sort. So there would be additional infrastructure investment that would be required for that. That wouldn't have necessarily been covered by the province. That would have been something that municipal tax dollars would have had likely been able to provide. So that was going into all of this. Everyone, before we did all our consultations, obviously had ideas about where we thought this may go. So I know that there was significant advocacy efforts made by Ms. Bowes, Spicer, and Clausen, who are in the room this evening, and the many residents that came forward during the in-person shelter consultations, the phone calls, emails, and survey commentary. There was a strong advocacy for no additional municipal tax dollars to be used for the establishment of a shelter location site. This engagement has made clear that the existing shelter site is by far the best choice, given the overwhelming requests of that group regarding site location and municipal tax dollars, as it requires no additional funds to establish site services. So regarding the process in general, what is clear to me after a couple of years on council is the need for a permanent shelter location. A few of us on here have spoken about the word permanent. Permanent, in my mind, in this is in opposition to temporary. So when the permits are applied for the MAT programs before, they were temporary in nature, meaning they had an expiry date. They usually started around November 1st, October 15th, depending on how soon the application got in. And then they expired somewhere between the 15th and the 30th of April. Generally, it usually was the 15th, and then it was extended a couple of weeks because it is Alberta and we've all lived in our climate and we've seen it snow on May long weekend. The shelter has closed before on April 15th, and an individual has passed away the following day due to exposure from the elements and a shelter not being open. I remember that very clearly. That was years ago. So that is what is meant by temporary, is that the permit is temporary. And usually when there's a temporary permit, then there's a period of time that a shelter as a permitted use cannot be there. Generally, it's 6 months and 6 months. Sometimes it's 7 and 5. So when we're speaking of permanent, what we're speaking is a permitted use that is permanent for that location, regardless of shelter provider, regardless of shelter operations. So if the shelter operations happen to be a winter only program or a MAT program that is evenings only and in the winter, or a full-time shelter program. So that is what is meant in our minds, from temporary versus permanent. So every fall, our council and residents have gone through the process of securing and approving a temporary shelter location. Every fall that I've been on council and every fall that I've been a part of, when I started, to be frank, caring about municipal council and caring about what happened on that. Every fall, you have an application come forward through MPC. It is either voted yes or no, and then there's a public hearing, and then there is potentially going to the subdivision application and appeal board, which I've seen it go through at least 5 times. So if there's opposition during the MPC process and there's an appeal, it goes through. So what extends a simple permit approval extends for months. The danger of this is usually there's a challenge in finding a shelter location that is suitable. So once the group running the program has identified a suitable location, then the permit is applied for. So they have already had a challenge and a period of time trying to find a shelter location. And then you have to apply for the permit. And from there, then we have the MPC and the SDAB process. So as painful as this process has been right here, this is the exact same process that has been gone through council over council for the last 10 years, every September. Our goal is to avoid that intense process every year. Not only does it use a ton of council and administration time, which is all compensated for from municipal tax dollars, and there are frankly quite a bunch of other things that could be doing with the same repeated argument over and over again. It is also dangerous to our homeless population and our Indigenous population, as increase of hate crimes statistically go up during those periods. And this happens every single fall. So the goal on council was not to enrage the entire community. The goal on council was to simplify the process and have a proper discussion, dialogue, and conversation. So I'm just providing some background from my perspective of how we got to this point here. So as I was saying before, every organization that has ran a shelter operation has had to spend hours securing this location and ultimately go through the contentious MPC and SDAB process. And there are many people in this room that have experienced this firsthand. It is not pleasant. This currently isn't pleasant, but why we need to keep doing that year after year, repeating the same thing, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. Our town only has so many available locations. The 5 properties that were identified for this study, the criteria was that they were all government-owned property. Not necessarily the government from the town of Slave Lake, but all government-owned property. So there were some that leases would maybe have been able to have been secured from organizations such as the Airport Commission, which is government adjacent, as well as the provincial government, such as the property across Highway 88. The old clinic site is as well provincially owned. So that was the perspective on what areas were selected for this. We had a lot of commentary of why would you select this area near the schools? Why would you select this near this? Well, the criteria was very clear in that it needed to be government-owned property. So that way we're not rezoning private property to council direct control, because that's also not an appropriate use of power either. So government-owned property. So yes, as you can see in the location, there are some that were near schools. There are some that were near downtown businesses. Now, it is very clear from the survey results that the public felt the same as I do, that some of these locations were not the best choice. But in the instance of providing as many choices as possible so that the public can see, our residents can see and evaluate multiple options at once. Every permit that has come through has looked at each shelter location in a silo. So they've looked at option A, and that's it. Not where else could it go. So by presenting multiple options on the table of the government-owned property, you can evaluate one item over the other. Is A better than location E? Is C better than location D? So there is some comparison there, but I think that comparison needs to be done. What we've learned from the previous SDAB and MPC processes and these permitting processes is that looking at each location in a silo has not worked. It hasn't worked every time. So to continue to do that again and repeat history, to me personally, doesn't make sense. So that's part, furthermore on the background of that. I will also say that no locations selection tonight will be ideal. And none of us at this table are under the delusion that it will. Not one of us thinks that there is a perfect, magical location. We're not under that delusion. What this council has identified is that there is a need for an established permitted location that is available and allowed use that is regardless of shelter operator or model. And that's the point here, is that we need a location. So there's a variety of models. We've had emergent, we've had MAT program, we've had a full-time model to care for our homeless clients. And we need a place. Relocating consistently is not effective. I will say with regards to ongoing shelter operations, as the conversation has moved into that, is that the regular shelter operations generally end between April 15th till April 30th. So that is your normal winter emergent MAT program period. So it is May 14th. We are 2 weeks into what would be the new period of spring and summer operations, only 2 weeks. Now, any current ongoing shelter operations, which are operated by the town of Slave Lake, will continue to be reviewed for their impact on the neighborhood, on crime levels, on our service level to our shelter clients and our residents. It has been 2 weeks since the normal program has ended. Now, we do get regular statistics which will be shared in our committee of the whole reports, and they are released monthly in our committee of the whole reports. We also have several communications that have gone out, usually 2 or 3 times a month, regarding our shelter operations. So those items are identified. We're identifying the number of clients, identifying who is using it as far as statistical speaking, and identifying how many individuals have moved along from the program. I believe the report later, don't quote me on the number because it's coming in the report, but I believe since the program has been open since November, it's over 13 clients that have been moved along to higher levels of care, meaning detox and treatment, home to their families where they have access to supportive services. And then there are additional individuals that may have come for a day for meals and moved along. And I think that number is far higher than that, but that are not currently accessing services. So to me, having these statistics, we register shelter users, going through all those items. The shelter isn't just operating and we forget about it. It's reviewed consistently. It has been 2 weeks since the normal program has ended. And I am just as disgusted and horrified by the amount of crime in our community as well. And if you want to look at my phone log later, you can see the number of calls that are made to our local detachment, the Eastern District, the MLA, and the ministers. We can come up after and I will show you. because it is daily. It is every single day of my life for the last 3 months. They have been called. And that isn't to get pity, that isn't to get support, that isn't to get sympathy. What I am saying is that we are actively concerned about this, and concern doesn't even begin to encompass the level of awareness we have about this. So we are not doing nothing, regardless of the entertaining commentary that I have the privilege to read daily, calling out the character of myself, our council, and our administration, which I personally find not acceptable. We have not done that to any resident here, and I would respect some level of decency. Anger, passion, frustration with the level of crime, frustration with all of that, I understand, I accept, and I respect. But personal attacks, and I've gone on a tangent here, so sorry, you guys have listened to me talk way longer than I normally do, so I won't speak during State of the Lake, but that level is unacceptable. We all live in this community. We all pay taxes. We all go to the grocery store. Our kids are in all of the schools. We see what's going on. We aren't out here to personally attack anyone. So I would ask that we all begin to exercise some common decency. And I understand that there's only 30 of us in the room so far. So I understand my message may not go further than that. But we're working very hard to push through any door that is available to us. And if a door is closed, we try to find a different one. And to be quite frank, that is very challenging with the federal government and some of the rules that I won't go into our justice system rant, but if you want that, give me a shout later and I'd be happy to talk about Bill C-75 and my absolute disgust with the federal government and the bail reform rules that they've put through. Things don't move fast in government. So the fact that we got any type of provincial response so far is fantastic. Our local, Steve just said amazing. I should say Councillor Adams just said amazing. The fact that we got any public response on video, it's all public, and go watch Question Period. I think it's been within the last 15 minutes of it. I watched it this afternoon. The fact that we have any response is fantastic because, as Councillor Ferguson said, we are not the only community that is facing this, and every other small town is doing the same fighting. And thankfully, we have an MLA that's listening and fighting the same way. I encourage you to contact Scott, and you can have discussions with him and he will share what I said here. Also needs to be made a push to our MP, Aaron Pearson. He's also well aware of this, but I would suggest communicating there as well. Our local detachment in the Eastern District for RCMP have been very cooperative. They're also understanding of the issues. Their detachment is open every day and you can call and have a conversation with the staff sergeant. He told me that I could say that before anyone thinks that I'm causing issues there, but we need to have better conversations. We need to be more respectful when we have said conversations. And we need to understand that we're all working towards a goal. And that goal is obviously having our community be safe, having all of us be comfortable where we are living. So that is the end of my very long-winded rant. Apologies, council. I don't do that very often, but it happens sometimes. In summary, I will say that in my opinion, all items being considered throughout this process and strongly weighing the survey feedback, that I am also in support, as everyone here is location D. I came into this with pretty sure that I was fairly confident that the airport location would be the location that the majority of residents wanted. To me, prior to a lot of this consultation, it honestly made the most sense. But given the concerns of the public and provided the survey results, it's overwhelmingly in favor of location D. So Councillor Achoba's first. He did. I got. It's okay, Councillor Achoba, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'd like to move that council direct administration to proceed with a permanent shelter application for location D, 901 Caribou Trail, and commence any administrative procedure required associated with this location.
Councillor Adams.
One of the comments I wanted to make on this motion as well. I know some concern was given over distance, access to support services, whatnot, with location D being the not ideal because of the distances away. Location A being much better because it's only 500 and some or 600 meters from Friendship Center, which is a great support for the community to have that available. Thank you, Barb. And then I was thinking back in the past where we've had it before, wasn't just the Friendship Center. Before that, we had it over at the church. So I was curious about that. And there was a support there where the access to the Friendship Center was still there, but it was surprisingly, it's further away than what the fire department is. I didn't realize that. So it makes me a little more comfortable because I know the support services were received there. I do wish we had a better location to be able to put this facility that would help everybody, both make the community happy with where it is, make our more vulnerable population happy with where it is. But it is very challenging. And I think I commented on this before that I'm with you. My initial thought was that it would really be pushed by the public to go to location A. But that surprised me. And talking about it with the future site of the police station being planned for that, however far down the road it may be, I think that is another benefit to having it in that location. I think the homeless, I know we were supposed to just discuss on location, but we have spun out more into the overall group, but having the stability, I think, is going to go a long way. And we've needed this for a long time. I know I didn't understand before I got into politics why we had to, this had to go through the public every single time, like always had to get applied for and gone through late applications, because I mean, let's face it, we all have other priorities that are out there that are important at the time. And it gets pushed to the last minute. Having the stability is going to be such a benefit for a vulnerable population. That being said, that's the last comment I wanted to have in there. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Just a question for Jeff. What exactly are the administrative procedures you reference within the motion, please? Just so everyone is aware of what that entails.
Yeah, so the next step on this location or any others, it could vary from whatever location was selected here tonight. For location D, what it'll require is administration to bring back a permit application without an end date, just like we would for any other process. So that's what it means for this option tonight. If it was under the other locations, it could mean securing a lease. It could mean looking at some of those extra costs that are administrative or extra functions that are administrative in nature. So it's a catch-all to direct administration to proceed.
We're just going to pause for a moment. If anyone would like to leave and not stay for the remainder of the meeting, I would suggest now. But you are more than welcome to stay. But usually we don't capture everyone, so. Perfect. We'll continue. So that answers, that was the end of that
thank you.
explanation. Are there any further questions, commentary there? I was gonna say I agree with Councillor Adams on a variety of things, especially with proximity to additional services. Thankfully, there has been the program has been effectively operational as an emergent program since November 7th. So these operations aren't going to change with respect to the nature currently. These operations are going to continue on from what we've seen since November 7th, with adjustments that would be made. For example, we did end the the banned individual listing. So there was an individual that was arrested near the shelter and that were accessing shelter services. This list is shared with the RCMP as well as the Friendship Center. They have their own list. So if there are arrests made with regards to property or other violent crime, but most of it's property crime that's coming up right now, and those individuals have been identified as homeless clients, then they have been, there is a banned list at the shelter. So that we are, and that is one of the policies that has been adapted in the last few weeks with regards to changes in our community. So we are being as adaptive as possible to those items that are coming up. So 2 weeks into this new season, it is one of those things that we're going to be continually reviewing. And just because operations are the way they are, doesn't mean it's set in stone. So there is a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion at this point? As I see none, I will call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Before we get into the CAO update, I would request a brief recess. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. We'll move forward into the CAO update. Jeff, take it away.
Good evening again. So as per usual, I'll just highlight a few of the more interesting points throughout the report. Again, you'll have all the details before you, and if you have any questions or anything I've missed, feel free to ask. Under our corporate services umbrella, just a couple of things to highlight under economic development, our rural renewal stream updates. We've got 49 employers participating, so an additional 12. 10 being from High Prairie, 2 from Slave Lake. 88 letters of endorsement have been issued, which is an addition of 18 over this period, 12 for High Prairie, 6 from Slave Lake. Our economic development department, in cooperation with Community Futures, successfully held their event in this last reporting period. The State of the Lake or Spark the North. And from all accounts, the event was very successful and well attended. And our economic development department has signed a contract with Truly Creative Marketing for a summer 2024 tourism campaign. The campaign launched this year, May 1st, and is based on feedback from council and contractor availability. Under our IT department under corporate services, our ERP project is at the finance module assessment stage currently. So the progress is actually tracking or trending ahead of schedule. In terms of, I won't go into the statistics, so we've talked enough about the shelter this evening, but I will just highlight a few of the programming issue or highlights that are on the report here today. So the focus is on recovery, housing, transition, and referral programs connecting residents to provincial resources. So here's a list of some of the things that they've achieved over the last month in that regard. So continued program facilitating birth certificates and Alberta ID acquisition. This program started in January. Processed 2 Alberta Support financial applications, submitted 2 treatment recovery applications, procured and paid for 2 birth certificates and 1 ID card, transported a client to a recovery program in High Prairie, supported 2 clients to get a job and will be exiting the shelter soon, started 2 clients long-term housing applications with some medical work also being done. 2 clients moved back to their families in Wabasca, issued 3 confirmation of address letters, supported 6 clients to file their taxes with FCS at their free tax clinic, handled a couple medical issues on-site successfully and off-site, transported 15 clients with the shelter bus for in-town services, so connecting services. There was a trip made for 1 resident to High Prairie to help resolve some banking issues, which was while waiting to get into long-term supportive housing. Connected residents with Alberta's virtual opioid dependency program, continuing with shower and laundry services, and facilitated AHS mental health counselor weekly visits to the shelter. On our finance department, tax notices were mailed out on May 2nd. Under our projects department, the Alberta Police Transition Grant was approved in the amount of $60,000 to conduct a review of existing policing service levels. So there's a kickoff meetings anticipated to be held this month with the consultant and stakeholders. It will be a joint initiative between the town and the MD. Our fire department had 246 calls as of May 8th to date, which is up from 209 for the same date and time 2023 or 171 in 2022. So continually trending higher year over year. In April 2024, we celebrated the first graduation class of our fire PCP program. Interviews for the next class have started and are as well as physical assessments. 5 students are enrolled to date. Training for April was structure protection sprinkler setup and hazard reduction burning. Search and rescue reviewed the wildland urban interface support and fire smarting strategies, as well as the SAR team was activated for a missing person. And most recently, some of our search and rescue team and fire department have been deployed or requested to deploy for some of the other emerging forest fires in the province. So we are lending a helping hand where we can. Under our aquatics department, next lessons are supposed to start the week of May 6th, so I believe they've already started. Our swim club meet is planned to take place on May 25th. We've seen an increase in the number of school lessons with some of our surrounding communities traveling into town, which is nice to see. Pool rentals have been filling up very quickly. When inquiring or when receiving booking inquiries, staff are recommending bookings are made at least a month in advance to help facilitate or have a higher chance of success in getting your time or slot that you're looking for. And we continue to interview lifeguard candidates for assistant and junior lifeguard roles, with 2 staff returning to Slave Lake from post-secondary to work for the summer season. Other than that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Counselor Adams.
Just a question in regards to the economic development piece. When we're reporting the numbers, are we able to break that down by contract, for example? So we know how many are out of our Slave Lake community, what the running number is for that, how many are in the contracted High Prairie region, and how many that's increasing by, and if we add any other communities onto it as well, that we'd be able to see how that works.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, the manager for that department's just reporting is breaking them out just for that month, but I think it would be
Yeah.
hard for a year to date to be broken out if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right now, there's only currently 2.
Yeah,
mean, there's-
that's right. Just
There's
start-
us and
I
High
totally
Prairie, so
understand that. But I thought if we could start this right at the beginning and make that the policy going forward would be great.
yeah, I think we could change how that's reported if you need that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Counselor Mollem.
So I'm reading that the pound is empty right now. Is that confirmed?
Well, it would have been confirmed as of time of writing the
So
report.
I've always known it to be full for the last long time, so.
Yeah, we've had some success in that, finding or utilizing some of the other animal rescues to help attempt to find permanent homes for some of these animals, right? So I
I
couldn't
will
tell
say-
you if there's any dogs in there today, but
I will say thanks to our operations team who has been handling a large portion of the bylaw operations with regards to our animal pound there. In light of some staffing changes. So I really appreciate the operations department in taking that on, and that's to have that empty. Some of those animals were in there over 6 months. That's a huge win. So thanks to the team on that. Not that they will necessarily hear this, but please pass that on to Calvin.
yeah, and equally is thankful for those, like our animal rescue or like or any of those associations and
Agreed.
volunteer-based organizations that are helping alleviate this problem, right? So sure.
Fantastic. Counselor Adams.
Motion to accept as information.
All right, any further discussion? Call to question, those in favor, and that is carried. Management task list.
Again, before you, if you have any questions, this is just a summary of outstanding council initiated requests.
Counselor Adams.
My question revolves around motion 81, National Indigenous Peoples' Day. I know the due date is on the report here is June 21st, but that's the date of the day. Do we know where we are in this process? If you can explain that a little further.
Yeah, I believe we've had, so I think in previous reports, we've indicated we were meeting with Métis 5, so we are jointly planning or facilitating their event, which I believe is being hosted at the MRC of this year.
It is, it's all
Yeah.
day at the MRC, so it's a full day-long event, and then there's coordination with the school districts. I just went to their MMIW thing, so I was talking to their administration, and there's coordination with the school districts to bring children over during the day.
So we are actively involved in the planning of that event with the organizers for that day.
It's at the MRC.
Couldn't give you the exact details or the agenda that's planned for that day, but
They do have
those are,
some traditional dancers and drummers that are scheduled to be coming up that day. And then it's going to be a community, it's going to be much larger. Last year's event was held at Northern Lakes College Gym, and this is at the MRC. And so the intention, because it is on a school day and not on a weekend, last year was Lemonade Day and Indigenous Peoples' Day and a Taekwondo tournament. There was a lot in that day because it popped up on there was some feedback there, popped up on my memories there on Facebook. That being said, there's quite a few things I know planned for that. Counselor Adams.
Motion 367. This is again on the truth and reconciliation piece. I know the report's coming up here for June 18th. I'm just wondering if we are on pace for that report. I just don't want it to get pushed back and forgotten since it is only a month out here.
yeah, as far as I'm aware, we are on pace to be able to bring back something. I
Excellent.
haven't seen a draft of it yet, but
No, I just reminded. Thanks.
I was gonna make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to adopt the management task list for May 2024.
Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor, and that is carried. Question period. As I see nothing, you gotta get
At the wire.
faster on that. Go ahead.
Okay,
Counselor
just a general question, because we're having all this conversation around the homeless shelter and everything like that. Is it possible to have scheduled in? I'm not sure what kind of timeline we'd want. But if it's possible to have a presentation from the shelter explaining to us what their procedures are, policy, day in the life, something like that, that can help us better understand and help the community better understand what it is and how it flows.
Yeah, so no different than any of our other programs, right? Well, on an
That's right.
annual basis, we'll do a service delivery sort of review in terms of the operations, in terms of things that are happening, what our current service levels or standards are. And, you know, look at it from that perspective and have that opportunity. So that is the plan.
Okay.
But when we get to about the year mark, right?
Is
because
it
we have-
better, like, I'd like to see something in place so we can understand this better prior to the winter season, if that's possible.
Yeah, and ideally it would probably be coming in early fall. Right? It gives us an opportunity to have kind of gone through 2 seasons or the majority of 2 seasons. So September, October-ish kind of thing before we get into that winter program or into that winter sort of idea would be ideally a good time to be able to have an accurate picture as to what we've done, what we've seen, kind of some of the statistics, some of the programs, some of the successes, some of the challenges, right?
That's exactly what I was just.
Totally on the agenda. It's coming just like any other service one is.
Just a follow up with that though, and I don't know if this is what you're looking for, Councilor Adams, but as soon as you said that, I was thinking this would be beneficial for us moving forward though. Could we not still have one for the first quarter, the first 3 months of the year, even January, February, March, to go over that? Because I feel like if we're waiting till the fall, then if there is, you know, things that need tweaking or deficiencies that arise, then we're waiting a long period of time to address those. So personally, for me, I would rather see a report sooner than later about the last 3 months so that we can be more knowledgeable, more in touch with what's going on and stay on top of it, is my thought on that. So I don't know that I'm prepared to wait until the fall, personally.
I guess it depends as to what you're looking for, right? I mean, if we're looking for a statistical review, that's easy enough for us to capture and to report, saying, here's how many clients, here's how many residents, here's how many new people, here's,
I want that,
right?
but I
But if we're
also
talking
want,
about the program and delivery,
yeah,
we haven't really got into, a lot of these are still in the development stage, right? So
Okay.
doing that, we're barely 6 months into this program. And, you know, I would say the vast majority of those 6 months, we've been building up and putting, you know, building some capacity, getting some staff in there, getting some staff trained. There wouldn't be a lot to report that would be at a stage that we can modify at this stage. I mean, we're getting to the point where a lot of those things are starting to be implemented and stuff, but we haven't been doing it for a long period of time necessarily.
I totally understand that. I just feel like there would be something, I would like to see something, whether it is a small report or a larger report that just speaks to policies and procedures and what is going on, because I do feel like I want everyone to be accountable in the situation. And I think the more information and knowledge that we have as a council, the better we will be able to address concerns and understand what is going on.
So do you feel that the information that's contained in your CAO report tonight is not thorough enough?
No, it's a good snapshot, I would say, month to month, and I certainly appreciate that, but I think I just want to know some greater details.
And then the
Like
ability to
policies and
ask
procedures.
questions.
Yes, and to be able to ask questions of the shelter manager as well would be a nice thing for us to do, maybe as a quarterly review. Maybe this doesn't stay, but for now, since we are in the beginning stages, I don't know that I see an issue, but I'll let others weigh in if they
Oh, you can.
would like
sounds
to as
you have a
well.
Motion to make as well.
Well, I'll let Councillor Choba weigh in.
Yep, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to echo some of that. I know that the shelter, like similar to what the CAO has said, it hasn't operated for a while, but I think there's so far it's operated for close to about 6 months or a little over 6 months. And I know that there should be some information that could be brought up when gathered. We're not talking about information in terms of quantity, but quality, right? Like, let's get those things that they've done so far that are things that the community should be hearing about. Let's get those things that, I know some of them are on here, but it's such an overview that it doesn't give, it won't give council and the community the depth of work that is being put into the shelter to really address some of those concerns.
Councilor Adams.
On that note, and some of the concerns, like what you're giving examples on and yourself, I do like how in your report, they are reporting in the programming section. It's showing the successes, it's showing some of the challenges that are there. But I am in agreement that maybe it is even a small presentation, just so we can get that feel or at least in the first quarter here. And maybe then I'd be fine with twice a year to start, but and then switch to annual when we're ready for it. But this is a hot topic in the community. This is something I care about, and it's something I want to make sure goes right. So I'd like to be informed further than just this.
Councilor
Go
Hughes.
ahead.
Yeah, my sentiments exactly. I agree with both of you. So in light of that, I will make a motion directing administration to please bring back a report on the homeless shelter operations, policies, procedures, any relevant information within the next, what is going to be reasonable to you, Jeff? Month? Tops?
Yeah.
Please?
Yeah.
Okay, and have it be a review of the first quarter of 2024, please. Thank you. That is my motion.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Do we have any further discussion on that motion? Yes, Andrew. Sorry, Councilor Chauvin. It's been a long night.
Can I make a friendly amendment to that motion? Not just the first quarter, but since shelter operations, because I think we will miss some stuff if we only
Sure.
focus on the
Yeah.
first quarter.
Yeah, just at minimum, but yeah. So since the beginning.
Okay, there's a friendly amended motion on the floor, for any further discussion. Call to questions in favor. And that is carried. Do we have anything else for question period? So I see none, we'll move into our committee reports. Watershed. That is you.
Thank you. The Lesser Slave Lake Watershed Council is having the annual general meeting on June 20th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the Medallion Room at the Slave Lake Inn and Conference Center. Registration is free, but you need to go online and register if you want to be there. At the www.lswc.ca. The Lesser Slave Watershed Council has grants funding available from the Watershed Restoration and Resiliency Program to support lakeshore acreage and agricultural landowners in implementing projects that will build watershed resilience to food and drought. That's it for me.
Okay, moving on with the Tri-Council Health Committee. Our last meeting was on May 6th. Most of the discussion during that meeting had to do with our EMS services. So Darby Bannister was presenting there. And EMS is part of the regular group that meets. So our EMS bases, we have Slave Lake, High Prairie, Red Earth, Swan Hills, and Wabasca. So that is what is the 5 stations that are a part of our division. We used to have a 27 individual vacancy, and now we are down to 18. So there has been a massive hiring in the last little bit, but we are still short 18 staff members, the majority of which are in Slave Lake and High Prairie. Now, what I did find interesting from this meeting is that there is with a driver's license and a 2-week course, you are actually able to get a job as an EMR and begin your path towards EMR and ACP, so like ACP building on your advanced care paramedic. So there is an EMR program that would potentially lead into PCP and ACP items. They're hoping to have, they are going to have sometime next year is a high school emergency services day that's going to have fire and our CMP detachment as well as our EMS services. We had talked about this, Darby and I, a while about trying to provide an exposure to a variety of careers. So I did want to highlight that if you are willing and interested to have a career in EMS, that with the driver's license and a 2-week course, you can be on the road and employed. So there is if you're, for instance, for some of our grads that are not sure what they want to do, that is a great opportunity to enter the workforce quickly, and we have vacancies that are definitely local. So there is some evening weekend course delivery for that program as well. And then there is significant potential to move into PCP, ACP programs. So just wanted to highlight that. I learned a lot about EMS during this meeting. What I would also like to say is that May 24th, so that is not this Friday, but next Friday, there will be an put on by our Tri-Council Health Committee in partnership with our local EMS and AHS. There is an EMS appreciation and AHS Rural Health Week barbecue that will be in the front courtyard of the town office. So that is Friday, May 24th from 12 to 1:30. There will be burgers and hot dogs, as well as several members of AHS and our emergency services team, and that appreciation barbecue for rural health will be going on then. Tourism.
Okay, pardon me. So we held a Beach Fest community meeting last night and are working on firming up a few more details with the schedule of events, and we will be releasing that to the public hopefully within the next 2 weeks. We will be doing a marketing campaign with Curiosity Edmonton to promote Beach Fest, as well as just the tourism in our region in general, which we're very excited about. The Slave Lake Region Tourism Board and a few external stakeholders are engaging in a workshop next Saturday, May 25th, to complete our strategic plan. The last strategic plan was done in 2016, and so we have applied for a grant from Travel Alberta, which we received successfully, and this will cover the need for an updated strategic plan that will help guide us along in our regional growth strategy. As Jeff mentioned earlier today, the VIC is now open for the season, and we will be utilizing some of the summer staff there to drop off visitor information guides and our top 10 things to do in the region at local businesses and tourism operators within the next few weeks. And the Slave Lake Region Tourism Society is very excited to announce that we will be placing a self-serve kayak kiosk system down at the handicap access point on Devonshire Beach for the summer months. The system is being purchased from a well-established company called Kayakomat, and it is a self-service rental station open to anyone to use. Visitors simply need to book on the site through the web app, and after they complete the booking, the customer receives a code to unlock the equipment. The equipment includes a life jacket and paddle, everything necessary to go out and have fun on the water. There will be singles there available for rent, as well as tandem kayaks for visitors to get out and enjoy our beautiful lake. The best part about this is that we will be filling in a much needed rental opportunity at our beach, while also generating income for the Tourism Society to continue to invest in tourism growth initiatives. And a big thank you to Tamarack Valley Energy from the Society, as they have sponsored the purchase of this kayak rental for us. So huge thanks going out to them. And we are still waiting to hear back on hosting a cultural awareness workshop in the fall of 2024. So hopefully I will have more news to announce at the next committee of the whole. Thank you.
Fantastic. Library.
That's awesome news. I know you've been working towards something like that for a while. That is fantastic. I'm excited for that. I'm going to actually have to go rent a kayak. For the Slave Lake Library Board, a couple highlight points. The art wall, local artist Lisa Lukens' beautiful artwork has been on display, and it's going to be there until June 10th. I would suggest you go check it out. She is so talented. It's amazing. It's great. We also reviewed the audit statement from last year, or from operations of last year. They also added the 1994 Arctic Winter Games memorabilia to the display cases out here. Should check that out. There's some unique items there. 21 events were held over the last month with an attendance of 243 people. And they are working to continue to work to create and update their capital plan for long term. That's it.
MPC.
This is gonna be short and sweet. So we met last week. The MPC approved 2 development permits. One for a home-based business in the southwest and another for discretionary use occupying space in the downtown area.
Airport.
So we met April 29th. We had our 2023 audited financials presented. Our revenue was about $135,000 higher than expected, largely due to landing fees and fuel sales from the fire season. Higher interest rates also helped with revenue. Expenses were also kept below budget. At the end of the day, it left us with about $107,000 surplus. The airport master plan is nearing completion. We are reviewing options for more hangar space on airport land. Additional hangar space would be quite beneficial as the airport is nearing capacity for lots that can accommodate hangars. And as discussed earlier, for the first time in the history of the airport, we have a noise exposure forecast map. This is important as it tells us where the impact of noise is most prevalent and gives recommendations for which uses should and should not be approved in the areas impacted by the noise. Lastly, we are working through the permitting and approval process for our shoreline stabilization project. Our hope is that if and when we are approved for the grant, that we will be completely ready to go. There are quite a few hoops and hurdles to jump through. Currently, the project is sitting with the Office of Alberta Arts, Culture and Status of Women to review if there are any archaeological concerns.
Fantastic. Councillor Ferguson.
Motion to accept committee updates as presented.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Ali, please start.
No, you got one of mine on the EMS barbecue. I want to say congratulations to the Lakeside Leader for winning the 2023 Best Sports Section and Editorial. For the 2023 AWNA, Alberta Weekly Newspaper Association. General Excellence Awards are divided by circulation, and the leader is in Class A, circulation's under 1100. It was a first or second in 3 of the 4 categories. So congratulations, Pearl and Joe and everyone else. Oh, sorry. 1,000. Okay.
Circulation of 100.
1,100. I do see that I did write it down
Thank
right.
you for the friendly amendment. Pearl.
Yep. Secondly, if you haven't heard already, Slave Lake Pulp Mill has a new owner. I would like to welcome Miller Western to our great community.
Fantastic. Anything further for State of the Lake? Okay. Councillor Hughes?
My favorite motion to adjourn.
Right. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Thank you.